Hi there. Today in this session, I will be discussing about typecasting in Java, one of the most important concepts when it comes to the fundamentals of programming language. This is the process of converting one data type to another data type. That's known as typecasting. Sometimes while we write a program, we need to convert one data type to another data type to store the specific kind of data, and that is the concept known as typecasting. There are two types of typecasting. One is the implicit typecasting, which is also known as widening, and another is the explicit typecasting that is known as narrowing, because typecasting in Java can be done both manually and automatically. When we say automatically, it is implicit or widening typecasting. When it says manually, it is explicit or narrowing typecasting. When using implicit, byte is the very shortest storage type. If you store the byte value to the short, no error, because there would be no chance of having a data loss. Similarly, short to integer, no error, and so on. But when you are supposed to store, you can see that the arrows are in different direction. Double to float, then typecasting is required because double has a wider range than float. If you will try to store the double value into the float, because the range is limited into the float, the chances of getting the data loss is high, and same way happens if you would like to store the float value to the long. Float stores the decimal precisions, but long does not. That's the reason typecasting is required, because chances of getting the data loss is high. Let's understand it practically. Let's say I have one integer value. I name this as int value e. If you would like to store this integer value to the long value, you know that long has 8 bytes, and the range is also high, no error in it. If you will store double, declare the double value and store the long value inside it, no error in that. You can try printing all the types. You can print integer value, you can print long value, and you can print a double value. It is not that the typecasting is not happening. Before assigning the integer value to the long, first of all, this integer value gets typecasted into the long this way internally, and then the long value gets stored into this long value variable. But this happens internally or implicitly. That's known as implicit typecasting from integer to low. Same way it happens in the next iteration. Implicit typecasting from long to double. But if I do opposite of inaudible, typecasting would be required. Let me demonstrate the same to you. I'm trying executing this program just for your ease so you can compare. There wouldn't be any problem. You can see that integer and long are of number type, but it is a floating number type. That's where the decimal is coming. I think that this is proven to all of you. It's not assigning the integer value, it is typecasting the long value to the double and then storing it up into the double. That's where the decimal precision is coming. Let me comment out this piece of code for you and just do the opposite of it. If I say I have a double value that is e, you don't need to write d, because when you assign the decimal value, it is by default double. But in case you wanted to store it into the short type or integer type, maybe integer value, you know that chances of data loss is very high. Because integer does not take the decimal precision, the chance of making a data loss of it. That's what its compiler is not taking its risk, its own. I manually need to write down that before assigning the double value. I want to typecast into the integer type. This is known as explicit typecasting from double to integer. For example, I can just first print it for you and can show it to you what would be the data loss. Double value is e, and the integer value is, you can evaluate by your own. We can see that the data loss is therefore. Similarly, what you can do is, rather than of, you can write it. Now if you will try to store it into byte value, that's an integer value being assigned to this integer value that is of this time, the byte value just stores up to or. But it is beyond that. It's so obviously data loss will happen. If it not happen, although chances of having a data loss is there, even though here if it is a, it will ask you to do this explicit typecasting for you. Explicit typecasting from integer to byte. You need to write by your own byte. And that's what you can try printing. What is a data loss? That is an internal calculation because it's a huge difference between integer and the byte value. That's what you can check. Minus is inaudible. This is how explicit typecasting, that is also known as narrowing typecasting, and the implicit typecasting, that is also known as widening typecasting works in Java. You can use this in any calculation, comparison, and computation. I just told you the syntax is to make you guys familiar with the concepts so that in case I can use them in my upcoming sessions without any hesitation. See you in the next session. Until next time, stay tuned. Thank you.